Hello everyone! A special day today with an incredible guest. We will speak with the most famous lady in the self-storage industry throughout Europe. She has an incredible 20-something years of experience in our business. She is a notable writer about self-storage, but overall a regular and qualified speaker at the most important self-storage conferences worldwide. And so I'm very happy to say good morning to my good friend Christel Land. Hello Christel, how are you?
I'm very good, thank you.
It's
how are you?
Nice to see you. I'm good too. It's very nice to see you. We know each other since a long time, and then I had the opportunity to listen to you so many times. And today is a special day because we will speak about you, your experience in self-storage, your experience in life. What you can say us about you?
About me? Well, first of all, I'm a mother of two wonderful children. I live in Copenhagen in Denmark. And my journey into self-storage started when I was a student. I was looking for a student job, and self-storage was the first place that offered me a job. So I thought, why not try it? I'd never heard about self-storage before. I was supposed to work every second Saturday. And when I arrived, they said to me, did they tell you about Monday? And I said, what about Monday? They said, oh yes, the site manager, he's unfortunately been ill. He's going to be away for 6 months, so you're going to be running the site. This was 2 days before Monday. So with 2 days notice, I was running a site by myself. And this was before the days of self-storage software and electrical gates. So, all of the invoicing was done by mail merge with Excel, and the gates needed to be opened in the morning and closed in the evening. So this was like my very first meeting with self-storage. And then since then, I really got a fascination with growth, personal growth and business growth. I think the two very, very often go together. And so that's really been the theme of my professional life. I've done many different things, but the theme has always been growth somehow.
Wow. And then you start to write some very interesting books about self-storage. How do you discover your attitude to be a writer too?
So I always enjoyed writing. Writing for me was always my outlet. If I was feeling stressed, I was bullied in school for many years. Whenever I was feeling bullied, I would either play my violin or I would write. That was like my way of processing things. And actually in my private life, I write quite a lot of poetry. I've never published any poetry, but I just write it for myself. It's like a way for me to process things that happen. And the beginning of my self-storage book was really, back in 2019, I was preparing a sales course, a video course for Fidessa, so that people could take a course whenever they needed it. And I was recording these videos. They needed to be quite short. So I needed to be very, very precise about the examples I gave, the language I used, not have any ums and ahs and this kind of thing. And so in order to record those videos, I needed to write a script for what I was going to say. So I recorded all the videos. It was a lot of work, much more work than I expected. And when I recorded it, I had all these scripts. And I think because I'm always working with growth, I'm always looking at how can I take something that is a little bit smaller and turn it into something that's a little bit bigger. And so I looked at these scripts and I thought, actually, these scripts for my sales course, if I put them together, it's the beginning of a sales book. So why not write a sales book? So I started adjusting it. I added a section on sales. I expanded it. And then I was really working hard to have it ready for the Fidessa conference in London in 2019. So I actually wrote the book in 6 days.
Wow.
I didn't do much else in those 6 days. It was very intense, but I managed to finish it.
And I'm sure that you weren't using ChatGPT.
I was not, no, ChatGPT didn't exist back then. And that's also the reason why when I reached out to you to ask you if you would write the foreword, I had a little bit of time pressure because I really wanted the book to be out for the
I was so excited to be asked to write the foreword to your first book that we translate also in Italian. So I recommend really to read the books of Christel Land.
No, I was very grateful.
And speaking about the self-storage industry, which is your view on the future trends?
So I think we have a lot of trends going on at the moment compared to if I look back at the industry 10 or 15 years ago, there were still, self-storage operators coming into the market, businesses were growing, but in terms of the product, for many years, the product was quite static. Self-storage was one thing. And that's really something where I think the last, say, 5-7 years, we've seen a lot of differentiation. And so when we talk about future trends, I think the differentiation is going to continue. At Casaforte, you guys have been working on different ways to bring storage closer to people, make it easier for people to access it. We have many more different types of outdoor storage being available. We have the growth of unmanned. So I think the product itself is becoming more differentiated, and I think we can expect that to continue. I also think that right now the hot topic is AI. Everyone is speaking about AI and how it's going to impact business and change business. There's no question that AI is going to have a big impact on what we do. I also don't think that anyone has any idea yet what that will be. Right now, we are all guessing. And the self-storage industry is typically not going to be the industry that is like the first movers with new AI technology. So I think for how we adapt to this new trend and the technology of AI, I think for self-storage businesses, it will be a question of looking at other industries that are similar to us. Co-working spaces, car rental companies, looking at how are they adapting AI and learning from that. I think that's the more likely way that AI is going to make its way into self-storage. And then of course, in the last many years, we've also discussed a lot about automation, unmanned sites. I think we can expect to see more unmanned sites in the future also. But the part that I don't think many people are talking about yet, which I think is going to be a bigger and bigger topic in the future, is automation is kind of, in my mind, step one. We make the processes so that they are not dependent on people in many stages of the customer life cycle. But it also allows us to collect a lot of data. And what do we do with the data? That's kind of the question. And when we look at other industries, what they are using the data for is personalization. And when you look at what the big consultancy houses, what experts are expecting in the next 5 to 7 years, personalization is one thing that comes up on top almost every time. So I think that we're going to see much more in our self-storage software, at our conferences, a lot more talk about how can we use the data we have about customers to make the customer experience, to make our communication much more targeted and much more personalized. That's something that I also think is going to be coming.
Great. I'm very happy about AI because in the future there will be a Cesare avatar personalized that will do my job, my daily job. So to speak about the daily activity that we have to do to manage our self-storage companies, maybe we can speak, or you can recommend something about how to manage and then to perform in a better way a self-storage facility or company.
I think I mentioned unmanned facilities just now, and I don't think that we're going to move to a place where the whole industry runs on an unmanned model. I think we're going to continue to see this differentiated approach. There's going to be both manned and unmanned sites going forward. But one of the really interesting questions or developments that unmanned facilities has brought to the industry is this question of centralization. Like, where do we find the balance between the decentralized and the centralized in a business? And I think that is really a question also for self-storage operators who have a decentralized model where there are people on every location or on most locations. It's built on more the traditional way of running self-storage that also is the dominant one in the US. But even there, I think there's an interesting business case to examine, are there functions that we can centralize? We all know that if we do things many times, we get better at it. We get more perfect at executing it. So if we imagine that we have, even in a completely decentralized structure, we have one site that is very, very good at handling late payers and contacting them, chasing them up, and another site where the team is really good at closing sales. It makes sense that they support each other in those different functions. So I like to think of centralization not so much as a question of where are people sitting, but are there some synergies that we can find in the capacities that our teams have? And if they sit in a site or if they sit in a central office, that's kind of step two. That's just logistics. But I think the question of centralization is a really interesting one to look at how we can optimize a business. So I think that's one. Another one is really about numbers. And of course, everyone will say, yes, of course, numbers are important. But I think knowing your numbers is step one. But I think in terms of optimizing the business and really having it prepared for the future, it is so important to connect the different numbers that we have. Many businesses have one report for, these are our Google statistics, these are our sales statistics, these are our length of stay statistics. And I think the power really comes when we can start connecting those. I would, my ideal situation is that I can look at a report that tells me that if I run a campaign where my title on Google is around security, my conversion rate is maybe going to be 5% lower, but the average length of stay and the average spend of that customer is going to be 15% higher. So I know that running a security-based campaign is good business, not just in terms of the immediate conversion, but also how much they spend and how long they stay. Yeah. I think connecting the numbers, that is really, for me, the foundation of having real control over what is going on in the business.
Very interesting point. And then the concept of connecting the number drive me to the idea of connecting the dot, the activity that we as executive, as manager of our company have to do every day. And then now speaking about the personal side, the human side, which could be the advice that you can give a human being to perform better, to be more inclusive with his team, to create and connect the dot.
So I am a big believer in, there's this saying that as above, so below, as inside, so outside. I am a big believer that if you want the team to be engaged, the first step is for you to be engaged. If you want the team to be creative, the first step is for you to be creative. I think that is being the qualities that we want to see in our team is the first step to creating that atmosphere where people feel comfortable and also challenged to be those things. So I think it very much, for anyone in a leadership position, it really starts with what kind of, not just kind of task-based leadership, not just what do you do, but also how do you do it? What do you bring to work in terms of the emotional environment, the psychological environment for people every day? And I know you've done a lot at Casa Forte to change that environment, and people have responded really well to that. So I think that is kind of the starting point for anyone, no matter what function you have. And that's true whether you're in a leadership position where you manage other people, but also if you're a site manager, you come to work every day. If I want my customers to be open and conversational and feel like they can approach me, then I need to be approachable. That's the only way I can start that to happen. So I think that's one side. And then the other part is, I think there's been so much change in the world, especially in the last few years. We have the pandemic, there's a bunch of different conflicts around the world, and there's uncertainty, and there's been inflation. There's been so many things going on. I was at the self-storage conference in Melbourne back in November, and I heard a speaker there say something really, really interesting that I think is very, very true. We've all heard the quote from Einstein that says the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. The speaker that I heard in Melbourne, Michael McQueen, he said, in this time where there's so much change, if we do the same thing over and over again and expect the same result, that's actually the definition of insanity these days. So I think keeping our eyes, our ears, our senses open to all the changes in the environment and adapting to it quickly, and not expecting that what has worked in the past is necessarily going to give us the same results in the future. I think that's also something really, really important.
I got your point, I completely buy it. And then I'm used to call it engagement. So something more than work with others, but to be engaged really. So finally, I would like you to give a small advice to the new beginner, the new coming in the industry, the new entrepreneur that start this adventure in self-storage?
Well, it is an adventure. I think that's the first piece of advice. I speak to many people who are on their way into the self-storage industry who don't have any experience with it yet, and they're trying to plan everything and get everything ready for their first site opening. There are two questions or two topics that come back time and time again. And so I think my tips begin there. One of them is the product looks like a commodity. It's 3 walls and a door. It's not a complicated product. So a lot of people who haven't worked in the industry look at the product and say, this looks like a commodity, so it must talk and behave like a commodity. The customers, the people selling it, it's all like a commodity. And those of us who are in the business know that that's not the case. The product is simple, yes, but when people need storage, it's because they're in a state of change. They are also trying something new for the first time. There's low market awareness in most places. And so selling self-storage and having contact with customers in self-storage is not like a commodity. And so I think that's the first really important lesson to keep in mind, because that influences how you build your structures around your team, your processes, everything. And the second point that also comes up a lot in conversations with new storage entrepreneurs is the idea that if I offer online bookings on my website, then I don't really need a phone number because everyone is just going to book on the website. And this is also one thing I would say, this is a myth. Maybe it will happen. I mean, I'm sure it will happen at some point, but in most cases, in most markets, that's not the situation. And it comes back to the low awareness. People don't know what self-storage is. There's also a generational question. In a lot of, I know Italy is a little bit different. The demographics for self-storage users is a bit younger than most of the rest of the European market. But in most European countries, we have sort of, middle-aged people like myself or older who are the core users of self-storage. And for that demographic, they will be more comfortable picking up the phone and asking a question than they are using an online chat or booking online and doing everything themselves. When the people who are 18 to 25 years old today become the core demographic of self-storage users in 10, 15, 20 years, then maybe we don't need phone numbers anymore. But when you're planning your business, you really need to also think of the customer contact, because just because you give the possibility to do everything online doesn't mean that the customers are going to be comfortable doing it.
Great, amazing. I'm sure that you can remember, as I remember, when the most important way to advertise self-storage was yellow pages.
Exactly.
Once upon a time, we start to be a little bit old. So, thank you, Christel. It was so nice to speak with you this morning, and see you soon. Ciao.
Likewise, thank you for having me. Bye.
Stay tuned, because we have a surprise. In few weeks and few days, we will have another chat with Christel, a second episode, because we will discover something very crazy, something very new. Christel some days ago, sent me this package, a Lego package. I don't know what she wants me to do with this package, but we will discover in a few weeks. So stay tuned and arrivederci.